Learning in Depth. And by the way, I am using this brand new program that I found that is all super fun. But this is my Learning in Depth, both a reflection and a interactive LiD talk about my topic, exploration, which I've been studying for the last 9 months. And I think that length of time is very telling. That's how long it takes to create or form a baby. And I feel like over the last 9 months, I have like, this is like getting this new little baby and presenting it to the world. And ironically, I think the more I've learned about exploration, the more I've realized is I just feel lost. Like I actually feel more and more lost as I've progressed along this journey. There have been many moments where I have felt lost, which for those of you who are parents, you do tend to feel very lost at times in your parenting as well. So this presentation really is about what happens when we actually get lost. What happens when we lose the map, so to speak? So exploration is very much associated. If you think about exploration, Andy asked the question, what do you think about when you think about coral? If you think about exploration, I know the little emoticon that we had was of a compass. In my enthusiasm about exploration, I got this like calendar for this year. Now I'm going to show you a calendar of maps and all these maps from past times and like how the maps have developed. Maybe everyone can just shout out what you think about when you think about exploration.
Sailing.
I don't know. Probably maps.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah,
that
sailing, maps.
feeling.
Uh-huh.
That
Cool. So
history times.
yeah, there is this very much historical perspective, and I did go down this road of trying to map out like a big history of exploration. I put it into 5 different periods, and I think that's something that I want to dive deeper into later in this.
I mean, exploration, like physical exploration, it's not really a thing anymore, is it?
That's interesting.
Not as much anyway. Maybe a little.
Yes, it's almost like the world. That was actually the original idea for this talk is like, why do we still explore? Why hasn't the whole world been mapped? And I actually tried that out and it took 72 minutes. So I was like, let's bring it down to like what happens when we lose the map. So in essence, this presentation is about my journey with learning in depth and the topic of exploration. And it is a kind of exploration of the topic of exploration. So I'm going a little bit meta here. And this is an invitation for all of you to do a similar kind of thing for your final LiD talk, is you can come and just tell us about your journey with your topic. This final LiD talk is an invitation to you. It's an invitation to you to just share your journey and what you've learned. So yes, for me, what happens when you lose the map? My sort of personal story relates to this book. So this book I found, and you can see it there on my screen, Africa in the Footsteps of the Great Explorers by Kingsley Holgate. Now, I found this book, I say found, yeah, I did. I found it at my mom's house. And you know, when you grow up and you leave the family home, then you do leave a lot of your junk at your parents' house. And this is some of the junk that was left by my brother, who has now since moved to London. So I live around the corner from my mum, and this book caught my eye, and I thought, yes, I want this because I'm studying exploration, and that's what happens when you start learning a topic in depth. You're like, yes, I want that book. It's about exploration, and it's about all these explorers. And then what I did is I turned into the front of the book, and there was all these like messages from people to my brother. So my brother Ian used to be a motoring journalist. He's still in the motoring industry and works it's all about cars and stuff like that. A lot of people are like, oh my goodness, he's got my dream job. Um, but my brother, as a motoring journalist back in the day, would be invited on these expeditions to cover the expedition for his magazine. And I was drawn to this top message where it said, "Dear Ian," and it said, we've like spent 5 days together, and it's more than some people would spend in a lifetime, and experienced more than some people would in a lifetime. But what drew my eye was this P.S. I don't think the rotor thing was your fault. And I was like, what is this thing about the rotor thing? And what on earth did my brother get up to with this rotor? So I texted him, and he had this to say, and I'll just actually read his message out. He's like, how's it, Chels? Ha ha, I forgot about that one. For sure to all of that, because I was asking him if I could share his story with you. He's like, well, I was tasked with holding the faulty distributor cap for the forward motor control, or the forward control Land Rover that they had on the expedition. But it was 10 p.m. at night, pitch dark, and they gave it to me to hold. But in the middle of the distributor cap is a small plastic rotor on a spring, which popped off into the loose sand, never to be found again. Then this delayed part of the crew because they had to try and get a rotor from Tete in Mozambique, which was like 250 kilometers away. How much is that in miles, guys? Like, it's like about 120 miles away. Okay. And this is in the unknown. So you can see we're all laughing about it, and my brother's laughing and going, whoops, kind of messed that one up. But yeah, he was traveling. So we're in South Africa, and then Mozambique is one of our bordering countries, and the Zambezi River goes all the way through Africa, and it all cuts sort of southern Africa. And so this was part of the trip, and Ian joined them in Mozambique for the last part of their journey. Yeah, so the story struck me because I was laughing, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe my brother like made such a faux pas and now caused this whole expedition to be set back so much. But it also just brought home to me is like, when you're exploring, you're in the unknown. And when you're in the unknown, a little thing like a little rotor in the middle of a distributor cap is gonna like completely throw you. And when we are exploring, whether we're exploring a new topic, we're going to feel lost. We're going to feel out of our comfort zone. So let's go and have a look at some of our clues that I've got for you today to answer that question, what happens when we lose the map? So I'm bringing a lot of my African and South African culture here to you today, which I'm delighted to share. So here we have a picture of a Zulu calabash, and the Zulu nation is here in South Africa. And this is being poured into a body of water that's very significant. In the background there, thanks ChatGPT and DALL-E for forming this image for me. That's your first clue. There's significance in the background there, I will just say. Then our next clue for today is a solitary wing. It's also sitting on a compass there, maybe one of the ideas around exploration. And then we have this lady. Well, what on earth is she doing? She is an explorer, and she's working from home. Okay, so she is sitting at her desk there, and what's on her computer? It looks like a mountain range, and she's got, linking to Andy's topic, she's got the scuba gear on, but she's actually sitting behind her computer. So what's up with that? Okay, so those are our three clues. So let's dive into that first clue and see what is up with the Zulu calabash pouring water into a river. So each of the clues that I've given you today correspond to a modern day explorer. And again, in trying to limit myself, I've looked into modern day explorers. So this explorer is Kingsley Holgate, the author of this book that I showed you earlier. So Kingsley Holgate is a South African explorer. And before I tell you more about the calabash, let me tell you more about Kingsley Holgate and his work. He is a modern day explorer, and he travels through Africa a lot of the times to bring anti-malaria, because malaria is a huge problem in Africa, and I believe it's the number one killer in the world. And so he brings malaria nets and malaria prevention and all this equipment and stuff that you wouldn't be able to get in these remote areas. So he is not going out there. I think also when we think of exploration, we often think of conquest and people coming to plant their flags and say, this is my land. Whereas I feel like with Kingsley Holgate and his missions, he comes to bring that humanitarian aid. I'm not saying he's a saint or anything, but he's got a different motivation and reason for exploration. What he also uncovered, and his late wife discovered on their explorations, that people did not have reading glasses, and they were then disconnecting with their communities and with their families because they actually couldn't relate, they couldn't read and write with and interact with their families. And so one of their other initiatives is the Right to Sight campaign, where they just take like reading glasses that we could pick up at the pharmacy or the drugstore, and they take those into these remote areas. So Kingsley Holgate is an explorer that explores to connect. And with this calabash, what he does with this calabash is on one of his first expeditions, he went and got water from the southern tip of Africa in Cape Town, collected water from the sea there, and then they traveled all the way up north in Africa. I should get a map. They traveled all the way the length of Africa, which covers the two hemispheres, to Egypt, to Cairo. And they traveled with this water with them. And they went, when they got to Alexandria in Egypt, at the mouth of the Nile River, they poured the water from the south into the north and connected symbolically the two sides of Africa. And so I feel like Kingsley Holgate teaches us that lesson, that when you lose the map, like, ask for directions, connect with the people, connect, and don't be afraid to go into the unknown, to what's very uncomfortable. I just think, oh my goodness, I don't even camp. Like I to travel through Africa, like with minimal supplies, where, you know, a rota is gonna completely compromise your journey, I think is very brave and very bold. Yet he goes forward, and when he loses the map, and he uses the people, and I say use in a very positive way, to find the way. So yes, I think here he's letting go of the known world, what's comfortable, and venturing off into the unknown, remote parts of the world, and bringing help and humanitarian aid there. So in that way, like, we could see him as a hero. And by the way, he is also 79 years old now, and he's still traveling. So yeah, it just links to Charlie Vernon, of these dudes who obviously were born in a time when it was like primed for exploration and curiosity, perhaps. So there we go. So that's the story of that Zulu calabash and how exploration brings connection. And then we're going to look at our next clue, which is this solitary wing on a compass. So this single wing was found in the Ethiopian mountains. So now I'm going north and then east of Africa, on the kind of the Horn of Africa. If you see Africa on a map, that horn is where Ethiopia is roughly located. And this wing belongs to a bird called the Netchasa nightjar. And it was named in 1990, or just after that, because they found just this wing. An expedition from Cambridge came across this wing, and sadly, the bird had been ridden over by a car or something. And so it was their policy to pick up any, what they called flat life. So anything that was dead, they would pick up and take it back to study. And they realized that this was a new species which they called the Netchasa nightjar. And its Latin name, solala, means single wing. And this is when so then I came across this book, The Search for the Rarest Bird in the World. So that there is a drawing of the nature jar nightjar, because the author of this book, Vernon Head, also a South African, you can see my focus here, I've kept it local for me. He then took up the challenge in 2009 to go with a team of other explorers to go and find this bird, this one bird. And again, it was in the most remote parts, but they went, and he talks about finding this bird, and to find this bird they had to find its tree, and to find its tree they had to find its land and its mountains. But yes, they had to use nature as their map, and they didn't have a map. Well, they did sort of have a map. In some cases in the books, I feel like they're a bunch of bumbling idiots, because I was like, they went there, they were supposed to have a light, but the only light that they had then blew, and they had to make a net. I was like, guys, take your proper equipment. So anyway, they let the land guide them, and they kind of also did walk the path of those early explorers. So I feel like here there's this release of control and surrender to nature. You're exploring. And then let's move on to our other clue, our third clue. So these are our explorers who are working from home. And what is this explorer looking for? Well, she symbolizes the explorer Marie Tharp at her desk. And so Marie Tharp was a hero of exploration that I uncovered, and she discovered the mid-Atlantic range. And this happened in the 1950s, and she was not allowed to go on the exploration ships because she was a woman. And it was actually thought bad luck for women to go on these ships in the 1950s. And another book that I found is this one, I'll show you in a minute, but it's actually a children's book, a picture book that tells the story of Marie Tharp. I'm so glad. I think it looks like Wood Sorrell's heard of Marie Tharp and has studied Marie Tharp. But she was left out of the actual exploration, but she got all the sonar data back in her office, and she sat there at her metaphorical behind her desk there. I think this is more like it. There's the Ocean Speaks book there, and there's Marie, finally on a ship by 1968. She finally got to go to sea. People came to their senses, and she gathered evidence. But before that, she really mapped the mid-Atlantic range, which basically divides you and me. So me here in Africa and you guys in America, we are divided by the Atlantic Ocean, and in that Atlantic Ocean is the world's largest mountain range under the sea. So that is what she discovered through all these readings. And she really, basically, she lost the map because she was excluded. And she made her own map. She made a new map. And this is where I feel like exploration is about disruption. So she was denied access, but then she actually really pushed and made this amazing discovery, which really also has defined plate tectonics and how we understand the Earth's crust and all sorts of things. Okay, so you're ready for our Mad Lib. Let's give our Mad Lib a bash. So here we have it over here, and I'm going to bring it over there, and let's see if anyone wants to have a guess at any of those gaps. So the Mad Lib goes, exploration means something, the something, and then following the something, and returning with a something something. So it's an adjective and a noun there. And then only by getting something do we something the way. Cool. With Sorrel, do you want to have a guess?
So, exploration means lose the map,
Yeah, amazing. You
follow
got it.
the land,
Yes.
and then I don't know anything else.
And maybe only by getting lost do we find the way. Maybe.
Yes, only by getting lost. Find, there's a different word that I have in mind there. And only by getting lost. Okay, yes. And which one do we have now? Following the land actually was the original thing, and I changed it a little bit, but I like that you've picked up on following the land.
Do we discover the way?
And do we discover the way? Cool. Also totally can work. I'll show you, and so I'm going to go like kind of in order here. So yeah, so exploration, you're right with Sorrel, it means losing the map. So actually like letting go expectations to a certain degree. And then following the wonder. I called it wonder because I felt that is what like kind of meshed all of those explorers together. And I maybe didn't quite give you enough hints on that, but I feel like all of them were like in Vernon Head's case, he was following the land, but it was that wonder of the land and that curiosity that they were driven by. Okay, and then returning with a something, and then only by getting lost. Okay, I'm gonna show you what the rest are. So
Is it better map?
okay, thank you.
me.
Okay,
Right.
I just now revealed it. I like that too, a better map. I've summarized it into like a new story. So coming back with tales and stories and yes, and a better map. I like that too. This is quite cool when you interact with these things. As you say, Andy, you can kind of come up with some more creative ideas. Only by getting lost. Correct. Do we learn the way? Learning in depth. And that's where I want to bring this back to, is that in learning in depth, you will no doubt feel lost at times. And when you get lost in your learning in depth journey, I encourage you to learn the way through connections like Kingsley Holgate has done, making connections between dry facts, but also making connections with people. Following your curiosity, that wonder, looking at the data. What does the philosophic data kind of say to you, and what stories does that tell you? Look for disruption and embrace discomfort. And my encouragement to you is to write a new story that is your story of what you've uncovered and discovered. So my final note to you, or encouragement to you in wrapping up my exploration of exploration, is this proverb. It's again a Zulu proverb, so I bring it back here to South Africa, is to get lost is to learn the way. So don't be afraid of getting lost. Use those different tools. You've got all of Egan's tools to help you find the way in your LiD journey, as all these explorers who've gone before us have done and have brought us so much joy and insight into our world. So thanks everyone.
Being lost is good, unless, well, I mean, like, getting lost in knowledge is good. Being lost in the forest is bad, and you will not learn the way. You will just, you may not learn the way. You might just fall off a cliff and die.
Well, you see, I think that's where you've got to read the land and read the habitats and use those clues, use that data to learn the way. So yeah, cool. We will be giving you a lot more on the actual learning in depth talk that you're going to be doing. But otherwise, we'll wrap up there. Thank you everyone so much.